Hello guys, welcome back. So in this episode, we are going to continue with our search integration. So in the last one, we did implemented the dropdown, which is meant to be a prerequisite for this. So now with that established, let's go back to our code and code this out. So within our code, here is the search component. And the whole idea of the search is once we type in our content here, then it's going to make the search. First thing first though, I want to do it such that when you start typing, it's going to settings to loading. And for that, we are going to be using this loading icon. So we're going to adjust this a little bit such that it's loading. So when you are typing and we don't have any information at that moment, it's going to show that it's loading. So what I'll do is I'll just create a loading component here so that we can easily reuse it. Alright, so here is the quick structure for the loader. And in here, I'm going to get the icon we are using. So here is the icon, and on clicking on it, I'm going to copy the name. So coming back here, I can use the icon like this. However, I need to import it here. So from the AI collection, I can import this icon from there. And now we are going to have the loader. However, it's not going to be rotating like we will want it. So just to see how this works, we can actually just remove all this. We're going to get back to that later on. So instead, I'm just going to have the loader icon here, or rather the loader components. So coming back to my browser and take a look. So here is what it looks like. So as usual, I'll play around with the styling and see what fits and share with us at the end of the day. Alright guys, after working with the style, this is what I came up with. And just to show us what I did, if we go back to our style, here is all I did. So here is the loader class, and I just added the padding of 20. So that means the loader itself controls its spacing, so we don't have to bother ourselves with that. Then for the SVG itself, I added this animation information, and this means it's going to just rotate continuously for 1 second. So the whole rotation is happening within 1 second. And I gave it a color, and here I created the rotate keyframe, and all it has to do is just transform to this particular rotation, and we're good. So that aspect of the search is done. The other aspect we want to focus on is when we are actually typing. So because this is expected to initiate a search when we type, we want to have a control such that we don't just search as we type, because that might bombard our backend with a lot of requests. So here we are going to introduce a concept called the bounce. And the bounce is an idea such that you type and wait until you are done typing. And this is assuming that, okay, you are done typing and this is what you want to actually search. Then it kicks in. So on that note, we are going to implement the bounce. So technically, you can go online and search for a debounce package, and you should be able to use that within your code. However, I want to show us the whole idea behind it and how it's actually implemented. Okay, so let's go back into our code. So talking about the debounce within our code, we could decide to create a hook for this. However, I don't think that would be necessary because we're only going to be using the feature within the search. We don't have any other place to use it. So instead, I'm just going to create it directly within the search. And here I'm going to need the state for the search itself. Also, I'm going to need a state for my loading states. So by default, the loading state here will be false. Then also, I'm going to need a ref for my inputs. Again, the input ref is going to be any because I don't want to target the input type itself. So here we're going to specify the ref. So what that means is we can easily get information about the input using the input ref. So next we are going to create the onChange function. So also the onChange is going to have access to the event coming from the input. And in here is where we want to actually set the debounce flow. So I'm going to create a constant and assign a set timeout to it. And I'm going to call the constant debounce. So set timeout. So here we can determine how long we want it to wait before making a search. And I think 1 second would do. So whatever you are doing, maybe 1 second would not be enough. Maybe let's use 2. So whatever you are typing and you delay for 2 seconds, then the search will kick in. So what do we want to do within the set timeout? So within the set timeout, we want to really update the search information with our input information. So here we can have set search with input ref.target.value. or rather it has to be current. So it's a ref, so we have to target the current first, then the target, then the value. Okay, so this is what we want to do after 2 seconds. However, since we are meant to remove this timeout, so this is meant to kick in after 2 seconds, right? But the whole point of the bus is that if we type anything within that time, then this should not happen again. So it should wait for another 2 seconds for it to happen. So on that note, we'll most likely want to bring this out. So we can have it as less the bounce of any. So we can just define it like that. We don't have to set anything to it. Then here we can have this like this. So now whenever we make any change, we want to remove that timeout first. So here we can say clear timeout. Okay. And just to avoid any unnecessary stuff, we can put a check there to see if the bounce exists. So when testing this, we are going to find out if we have any issue from our console. And if we don't, then we can just avoid unnecessary space usage by having the check. Because if we go back to the machine level, every control structure you use tends to use space. So if you can, just try to avoid it, which is what we are trying to do here. But if we don't have a clean code, if our code is reporting error where we do this, then it's just okay to check for it. So now we have the unchange, which is the ultimate part we'll need. And here we can just put the unchange here. And we can format our code. So that's the bounce stuff itself. So technically, if you want to have it within a hook, then these are the contents we are going to be pushing to that hook. And with that, we can set what our debounce time will be and others as such. So finally, how do we undo our search? So we can undo our search within a use effect. So in here, we're going to create a use effect. And all we want to do here is to listen to when the search changes. And that's when we want to perform our search. So in here, we have the search variable. And here for now, I'm just going to perform search. So in preparation for our search flow, we need one more variable. So we're going to create a state here. And this is going to be the search blocks. And this is going to be an array of I blocks. So by default, it's going to be an empty array, like that. So within our dropdown, we are going to handle when to load and when to show our content. So we can easily control that by having if loading, then show loading. Or rather, show the loader component. However, if we are done loading, and this is the assumption that the dropdown is opened, and we are not loading anything, then we want to show our search content. So in here, we're going to look through the search blocks. And here we're going to create a div for search item. And this doesn't need to have its own component. We can just have it here. So here we're going to have the key as index. Then here we have the item itself. So because it's a blog item, we're going to target the item.title. And we should be good. So our search flow is getting up together. So one more thing we can do is we can check if the element within the search block is more than 1. So that's a consideration that we actually got something. However, if the element is less than 1, that means we didn't find anything. And for that, we probably just want to return we could not find anything. So in here, we can also say if search blocks dot length is greater than 0, then that's when we actually want to look through this. However, if not, we can just have here div no block found. So here we can just have a class for not found, and we can style that later on. So this is me just blocking out the structure for our search. So we've not really implemented the search itself. So finally, we can create the search request function itself. So here we can have const make search. And this is going to be an async function because this is going to be making a request. And we can just copy the information here from the page. We've done something like this already. So within the home page, we have the blog list. And all we want to do here is just copy this. Now paste it here. So we need to import this getData function. So we are making requests to the same blog URL. However, this is going to be a search. So we are going to pass the search information as a query parameter. So remember, when we were setting up our API, this was a consideration. So to confirm the key here, we can easily just go back to our API implementation. We can stop the server. I'll just do that. And I'll go back to my blog view. So top blog view, or rather the blog view itself. And I'll come down to the function. So it's implemented search, and the keyword is keyword. Okay, and this is what it's considering for our search. So yeah, with that noted, we can close it, start our server again. So leave that. So come here. So what we want to have here is keyword, and keyword would be equals to our search, like that. However, before making any search, we want to set loading to true. So that means whenever we try to make a search, it's going to show that it's loading, and once it gets something, it's going to show it on our list. And if it doesn't get anything, it's going to show that nothing was found. So after making the search, we can set loading to be false, and then we can set search blocks to be blocks. So we want to perform this operation when we make search. So here we can just call make search. So when the content within search changes, then we want to make search. So I believe that's all we need to do to implement the search. We've not really checked our browser so far. We are assuming this is how things should play out. So let's actually check our browser, pull out our console, and see if it works. So the test server is running again. And if we come back to our browser and refresh, we don't have any error. Let's pull up our console and see what we have here. So nothing seems to happen here. Okay, looks like we got something already, even though we didn't make any search. So you find out that we're having some information here, even though we've not styled it well. And the way this works is, if we don't have anything, if we are not putting anything within our search, then it's going to return everything, because that means it fulfills everything. So the way to avoid this is to only search when we have content within our search. So if we not have anything, then it should not search. So the way I see to control this is, within here we can have a control that shows if we do not have any search information, then we can just enter start typing. So something like that. So because we want to control our search at least with a keyword, just to clean up our space here, we can have this within a function. So const get search info, like that. So if it's loading, so it's going to be much cleaner this way. Return the loader components. If the search blocks.length is less than 0, or rather if it's greater than 0, then this is the point where we want to return the content itself. So we'll return this. Else, so we can just consider the else for this. We want to return this. So with this particular check, this function is always going to return something, because there is always a condition for this. Then the main condition we want to check for is when there is no item within our search. So if not search, then return. Yeah, we can use this same class, but I think I'll dedicate that to just not found. So I'll just have a class called placeholder here and give this start typing. Okay. So this is going to be our function to call to get our components within the dropdown. So I'll just remove all this. And in here, we are going to call this function. And it's going to return the component we need. So also, we want to only make this search because according to the implementation we have here, once this component is mounted, because this is going to still make the mount call. So it's going to handle both component did mount and when search content changes. So once this component mount is going to make this call. So what we want to do instead is we want to only make this search if there is a search information itself. So here we can have if search exists. If there is search, then that's when we want to make the request. So by default, the request would not exist. So let's check it out. So as we can see, we have start typing. If we click out nothing, and if we click in, we have start typing. So let's undo the styling for the placeholder. So the styling for the placeholder and the not found for now is going to be similar. We can change that later on. So here I'm just going to have a padding of 20 pixels all around. Then I'm going to reduce the font size to 14 pixels. And I think that's all we have to do here. Yeah, and also I'm going to reduce the color. Okay, let's take a look at this. Alright, so doesn't look like we have any error issue here that is prompting us to include the check. So let's start typing. So let's say use. Okay, there's an error. So cannot read property of undefined value. So that is an error from our ref. So this is the error we are getting, impute ref. Alright, I see. So I think the mistake I'm making is assuming that we still have to check for targets even though we have the current. So technically the current is the target itself. So as a result of that, we don't need to look for target again before doing our stuff. So yeah, let's try again. So start typing. So here we are going to have use. And as you can see, it was loading and it brought our stuff. So let's search with the one with Adefemi breaks. So as you can see, this search seems to be working. So one thing we need to do is to make this finer because it looks so random now. So if you come back to our code, so we are going to locate the search item. We'll come back to the style. So this is our search working and there is no error. So we don't have any error as you can see. So finally, to avoid this particular one, unable to read value, we can come back to the search and only, so coming back to the unchange, if this exists, that's when we want to check for the value. So refresh. So when we click on this, it says start typing. So in this case, we want to search for the serializer information. So we can say serializer, and as you can see, it brought the serializer information. And there is no error on our console. Let's also see how it makes its requests. So network call. So let me remove this. So it looks like what I was trying to avoid by introducing the bonds is what is currently happening. And I think I know why. So if we go back to our code, so in here, all we have here is 2, which is really not 2 seconds. This is 2 microseconds, which is going to be as if we have nothing. So here, this should be 2000, and that's real 2 seconds. Okay, so let's check back. Let's see. So serializer, and as you can see, nothing is happening. However, after that, it makes the request, and we get this. And I think that's more or less like it. So let's search for just SC. Okay, SC is that. And I think 2 seconds seems to be too much. Let's change it to 1 second. Okay. So let's search for use. And there we have it. So we have our search as we can see. And with that, we are done with our search task. And we can come back here, pull this to done. And in the next episode, we'll move on to integrating the single blog. So guys, there we have it in this episode. If you enjoy it, kindly leave a thumbs up. You leaving a thumbs up is going to help the channel by recommending it to other people out there. Also, if you've not subscribed, I will appreciate you do that. So that's it for this episode. See you in the next one. Bye for now.